The spear punches through bronze armor. Blood sprays across sun-baked stone. A Spartan warrior, his red cloak torn, his helmet cracked, pulls the blade free and drives it into the next man, then the next, then the next. Behind him, 299 other Spartans stand shoulder to shoulder in a corridor of rock so narrow that 10,000 enemy soldiers can only approach 3 at a time. The Persians keep coming, the Spartans keep killing, and somewhere in that mountain pass, between the cliffs and the sea, history is about to witness something that will haunt empires for the next 2,500 years. This is Thermopylae, 480 BC. A tiny force of Greek warriors facing the largest army the ancient world has ever seen. You've heard the legend of the 300 Spartans, but here's what they never told you. This wasn't just a battle. It was a calculated massacre, a political sacrifice, a propaganda machine that changed warfare forever. And the truth? The truth is so much darker than the movies ever showed you, because those 300 Spartans, they knew they were going to die. Not maybe, not probably, they knew. And they marched anyway. But here's the part that'll make your blood run cold. Their own people sent them there to die, on purpose, as part of a plan. And what happened in those 3 days of slaughter would become the most dangerous story ever told. Keep watching, because this gets worse. Let's rewind. The year is 480 BC, and the most powerful man on earth is coming for Greece. His name is Xerxes, king of Persia, king of kings, the God King, as his people call him, and he's pissed. 10 years earlier, his father Darius sent an army to conquer Greece. The Greeks, those stubborn, chaotic city-states who couldn't agree on anything, somehow united just long enough to crush the Persians at Marathon. It was the most humiliating defeat in Persian history. Now Xerxes wants revenge, and he's not taking chances this time. Ancient historians say he assembled an army of over 1 million men. Modern scholars think it was closer to 200,000 to 300,000. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter. Even 200,000 is an apocalyptic number for the ancient world. It's a moving city, a human avalanche, an army so massive it drinks rivers dry. The Persians march west. They build a bridge of boats across the Hellespont, the strait separating Asia from Europe. When a storm destroys it, Xerxes orders his men to whip the sea 300 times for disobeying him. That's the level of power we're talking about. This isn't a king. This is a force of nature with an empire behind him, and he's headed straight for Greece. The Greeks panic. Most city-states want to surrender immediately. Some do. Others argue, bicker, fight amongst themselves. But 2 cities refuse to bow. Athens, the democracy, the philosophers, the thinkers, and Sparta, the warriors, the wolves, the most feared soldiers on the planet. Here's what you need to understand about Sparta. This wasn't a city with an army. This was an army with a city attached. Spartan boys were taken from their mothers at age 7 and thrown into the agoge, a brutal training program designed to turn children into weapons. They were starved, beaten, forced to fight each other, taught to steal food to survive. Weakness was punished with death. By the time a Spartan became a full citizen soldier at age 30, he'd already survived 2 decades of hell. These men didn't retreat, ever. Spartan law was simple: return with your shield or on it. Come home victorious or come home dead. There was no third option. So when Xerxes' messengers approach Sparta demanding their surrender, demanding the traditional tokens of earth and water, the Spartans throw the messengers into a well. If you want earth and water, dig them up yourself. It's one of history's coldest responses, and it seals their fate. Now here's where the story gets complicated, because when Xerxes' army approaches, Greece needs all of Sparta's soldiers to fight. But Sparta has a problem. The Carnea, a sacred religious festival, is happening. Spartan law forbids warfare during holy festivals. To break this law would anger the gods. And there's another festival coming right after, the Olympic Games, also sacred. The Spartans are paralyzed by their own tradition. But they can't just do nothing. If Xerxes conquers Greece, Sparta falls too. So the Spartan king, Leonidas, comes up with a solution, a loophole. He'll take his 300-man royal bodyguard, the Hepes, the elite of the elite, and march north. Technically, it's not a full military campaign. It's just the king taking a walk with his bodyguards. But here's the hidden truth they don't teach in schools. Leonidas chose his 300 warriors based on one criteria. Each man had to have a living son. Think about that. He only selected fathers, men with heirs, men whose family lines would continue after they were gone. Because Leonidas wasn't planning a battle, he was planning a suicide mission. And he knew it from day one. The oracle at Delphi had already delivered the prophecy. Either Sparta falls or a Spartan king dies. Leonidas made his choice. But here's the part that makes this even darker. Sparta's government wanted this. The Ephors, Sparta's ruling council, wanted Leonidas to buy them time to finish their festivals, time to mobilize the full army, time to prepare. So they sent 300 men to die while the rest of Sparta stayed home. It was a sacrifice, a calculated political move disguised as honor. And those 300 warriors, they knew exactly what they were marching towards. But Leonidas wasn't completely alone. When he reached Thermopylae, the hot gates, named for its thermal springs, other Greek city-states sent reinforcements, about 7,000 men total. But here's what happens next, and this is the part they erase from every textbook. Most of the Greeks were going to abandon the Spartans, and Leonidas knew that too. Thermopylae is perfect defensible terrain. Imagine a narrow coastal pass, barely wide enough for two carts to pass side by side. On one side, sheer cliffs, on the other, the sea. The Persian army, hundreds of thousands strong, has to funnel through this choke point. Their numbers mean nothing here. Leonidas positions his men at the narrowest point. The Spartans form a phalanx, a wall of bronze shields and iron spears, each man protecting the soldier beside him. It's the most effective infantry formation in the ancient world. When the Persians arrive, Xerxes sends a scout to observe the Greeks. The scout returns with a bizarre report. The Spartans are outside the wall, exercising and combing their long hair. Xerxes doesn't understand. His advisors explain, this is what Spartans do before they fight to the death. They're preparing their bodies for glory. Xerxes sends a messenger, lay down your weapons. Leonidas replies with 3 words that will echo through history. Molon labe, come and take them. The battle begins. Xerxes sends wave after wave of soldiers, Persians, Medes, subject peoples from across his empire. They crash against the Spartan phalanx like water against stone, and they die. The Greeks rotate fresh fighters to the front. The Spartans fight in shifts, staying disciplined, holding formation. The Persians, brave, skilled warriors in their own right, can't break through. The pass is too narrow, their numbers useless. Bodies pile up. The ground becomes slick with blood. One ancient source claims the Spartans killed 20,000 Persians alone on the first day. That number is probably exaggerated, but even if it's half true, it's a massacre. On the second day, Xerxes sends his immortals, his elite 10,000-man guard, the best soldiers in the Persian Empire. The Spartans cut them down too. At one point, the Greeks pretend to retreat. The Persians rush forward, breaking formation. The Spartans turn and slaughter them. Xerxes reportedly leaps from his throne 3 times in horror, watching his finest troops die in that narrow corridor of stone. The ancient historian Herodotus writes, "The Spartans showed in every way that they were skilled fighters among men who were not." Translation: they were lions among sheep. For 2 days, 7,000 Greeks hold back an empire. But Xerxes knows something Leonidas doesn't. There's a hidden path through the mountains. His name is Ephialtes, a Greek local. Some accounts say he's deformed, rejected from military service, bitter and desperate. Others say he's just greedy. Either way, he goes to Xerxes with an offer. "I'll show you the mountain path, you can surround them." Xerxes sends his immortals through the mountains at night. They march through darkness, following narrow goat paths, slipping on loose stone. By dawn, they're behind the Greek position. A group of 1,000 Phocian Greeks are guarding the mountain pass. When they hear the Persians coming, the sound of thousands of feet, the rattle of armor, they panic. They retreat to higher ground, expecting to be attacked. But the immortals ignore them. They're not here for a side battle. They're headed for Thermopylae. When scouts bring word to Leonidas that the Persians are flanking them, he makes a choice. He orders most of the Greek allies to retreat. "Save yourselves, live to fight another day, warn the other cities." About 4,000 Greeks withdraw, but the Spartans stay. So do 700 Thespians, warriors from the city of Thespiae, who refuse to abandon the Spartans even though they're not bound by the same code, and 400 Thebans, though ancient sources argue they stayed as hostages. Roughly 1,400 men total. They all know what's coming. Leonidas' second-in-command asks him, "Why are we staying?" Leonidas replies, "So that the others may live." They're buying time, a few more hours for the Greek allies to escape, a few more hours for word to spread south. But there's something else too. Leonidas knows that if Sparta's king dies here, if the prophecy is fulfilled, his death will become a legend, a story, a weapon more powerful than any army. And he's right. The third day dawns. The Persians attack from both sides now, front and rear. The Greeks abandon the narrow pass and move to a small hill. They form a circle, shields facing outward. The Persians swarm them like ants. The Greeks fight with spears until their spears break. Then they fight with swords. When their swords shatter, they fight with daggers. When their daggers are gone, they use their hands, their teeth, anything. The ancient sources say Leonidas falls early in the final fight. The Spartans battle over his body, refusing to let the Persians take their king. Twice they drive the enemy back. Twice they reclaim his corpse. But the numbers are impossible. One by one, the Greeks fall. The Persians retreat and fire arrows instead, thousands of arrows, so many they blot out the sun. One Spartan warrior had joked about this days earlier. When told, "The Persian arrows will darken the sky," he replied, "Good, then we'll fight in the shade." Now those words turn prophetic. The arrows rain down, and the last of the Greeks die on that hill, shields raised, defiant to the end. When the battlefield falls silent, the Persians find 1,400 Greek bodies and 20,000 Persian corpses around them. Xerxes, consumed by rage, orders Leonidas's body beheaded and crucified, a shocking dishonor for the ancient world. Even enemy kings were usually treated with respect, but Xerxes wanted to humiliate the Spartans. Instead, he makes them immortal. Here's what they don't tell you in the movies. The Battle of Thermopylae was a defeat. The Greeks lost. The Persians marched south. They burned Athens to the ground. They destroyed temples, slaughtered civilians, razed entire cities. For weeks, it looked like Greece was finished. But something strange happened. The story of the 300 Spartans spread like wildfire. Greek soldiers who'd fled, who'd been ready to surrender, heard what happened at Thermopylae and felt ashamed. They remembered that 300 men held back an empire for 3 days. They remembered that Spartans never retreated, and they decided to fight. A few months later, the Greek navy destroyed the Persian fleet at Salamis. The next year, the Greek armies crushed the Persians at Plataea. Xerxes retreated. His invasion failed. And historians agree it failed because of Thermopylae. Not because the Spartans won the battle, they didn't, but because they created a story so powerful that it turned terrified, divided Greek city-states into a unified force. A story that said, if 300 men can stand against an empire, so can we. Here's the even darker truth. Sparta's government planned this from the beginning. They didn't send Leonidas north to win. They sent him to inspire. They knew Greece needed a symbol, a sacrifice, a myth, and they used their own king as bait. It was the most brilliant propaganda operation in ancient history, because Thermopylae didn't save Greece with swords, it saved Greece with a story. But wait, there's more. Here's the part that'll make you angry. For 2,500 years, history focused on the Spartans, the 300, the warriors, the heroes. But 700 Thespians died on that hill too. They weren't Spartans. They weren't bound by the same code. They could have left. But when Leonidas ordered the retreat, the Thespian commander, Demophilus, refused. We will not abandon you. And they didn't. 700 men from a city you've probably never heard of stood beside the Spartans and died just as bravely. But history forgot them. Why? Because Sparta controlled the narrative. Sparta had the propaganda machine. Sparta made sure the story was about Spartan honor, not Greek unity. The Thespians were written out of history. Even their monument at Thermopylae was smaller, placed behind the Spartan memorial. It's one of history's cruelest erasures. Those 700 warriors chose to die for Greece, not for their own city's glory, but for the principle that free men don't bow to tyrants. And for 2,500 years, almost nobody remembered their names. This is why history is dangerous, because whoever controls the story controls who gets remembered and who gets erased. Here's another truth they bury. Sparta wasn't the shining beacon of freedom we pretend it was. Yes, Spartans were incredible warriors. Yes, they fought for Greek independence against Persia. But Sparta was built on slavery. The Helots, Sparta's underclass, outnumbered Spartan citizens 7-1. They were brutalized, terrorized, murdered regularly to keep them afraid. Every year, Sparta's leaders declared war on the Helots, not metaphorically, literally, so that killing them wouldn't be murder under Spartan law. Young Spartan warriors proved themselves by hunting Helots at night, for sport. This is the society we celebrate. The same warriors who died heroically at Thermopylae lived in a state built on terror and oppression. Does that make their sacrifice less meaningful? Does it change what they did at the hot gates? That's the question history forces us to confront. Because the truth is complicated. The Spartans were heroes and monsters, freedom fighters and slave masters, defenders of Western civilization and architects of systematic cruelty. All of it is true. And that's what makes history so uncomfortable. We want simple stories, good guys and bad guys, heroes and villains. But real history is messy. The men who died at Thermopylae were brave beyond measure. Their sacrifice mattered. It changed the world. And they returned home to a society that whipped children and murdered slaves. Both things are true. The story of Thermopylae became the most powerful military legend in Western history. Alexander the Great studied it, Roman generals referenced it, medieval knights told the tale, modern soldiers remember it. Every time a small force holds ground against impossible odds, we think of the 300. Every Alamo, every last stand, every desperate defense, they all trace back to this moment. Because Thermopylae taught the world something terrifying. Sometimes losing is more powerful than winning. Sometimes a beautiful defeat inspires more than a boring victory. Sometimes the story matters more than the outcome. This is why tyrants fear martyrs. This is why empires collapse when people are willing to die for an idea. Xerxes had the largest army in the world. He had infinite resources. He had every advantage. But he couldn't kill the story. And the story destroyed him. Within decades, Persia would fall to Alexander the Great, a Greek king who grew up hearing about Thermopylae, who believed that Greek warriors were superior because of what happened at the Hot Gates. The battle Xerxes won planted the seeds of his empire's destruction. You're probably wondering, why does this matter now? Because we're still telling this story. We made it into a graphic novel, then a movie, then memes, then TikToks. 2,500 years later, and we're still obsessed with 300 men who died in a mountain pass. Why? Because the lesson of Thermopylae is eternal. Numbers don't matter if you refuse to break. But here's what we forget. The Spartans didn't win by being stronger. They won by choosing the battlefield. Leonidas didn't fight Xerxes in an open plain where numbers mattered. He found a narrow pass where courage mattered more than size. Strategy, terrain, psychology. That's the real lesson. Power isn't just about strength, it's about knowing where and how to use it. And sometimes it's about knowing when to sacrifice yourself so others can win. That's the truth they don't teach. Thermopylae wasn't about 300 warriors. It was about one king who understood that his death would matter more than his life. Leonidas didn't die for Sparta. He died for an idea. And the idea won. Before the final battle, Leonidas tells his men to eat well tonight, for tomorrow we dine in Hades. They feast, they laugh, they sing. They know they're going to die in the morning, and they celebrate anyway. That's courage. Not fighting because you think you'll win, fighting because it's the right thing to do, even when you know you'll lose. And here's the most haunting part. When the Persians finally overran the Greek position and found the bodies, they were struck by something strange. The Spartans had fallen in perfect formation. Even in death, they maintained their line. Shields locked, facing the enemy. Some ancient writers say the Persians wept when they saw it. These were their enemies, but even they recognized what they were looking at. Men who refused to break. Even when breaking would have been easy, even when survival meant retreat, even when every logical reason said run, they stayed. And that image, that circle of dead Greeks on a blood-soaked hill, shields raised toward an empire, became the most powerful symbol in military history. Because it proved something terrifying. Ideas are bulletproof, stories are immortal, and courage is contagious. Xerxes thought he won at Thermopylae. He marched south, he burned Athens, he planted his banner over Greek soil. But a year later, he fled back to Persia, his army shattered, his fleet destroyed. And the Greeks, unified by the memory of 300 warriors who refused to kneel, built a civilization that would dominate the world for 1,000 years. Philosophy, democracy, science, art, theater, mathematics. Western civilization was born in the centuries after Thermopylae, and it was born because a small group of warriors showed the world that free men fighting for something they believe in are unstoppable. Not unbeatable, but unstoppable. There's a difference. You can kill brave men, but you can't kill what they stood for. And that's the legacy of Thermopylae. Not victory, immortality. Today, if you visit the site, there's a monument with an ancient epitaph. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here obedient to their laws we lie. They didn't die for glory. They died because their law, their code, demanded it. And 2,500 years later, we're still talking about them, still inspired by them, still haunted by them. Because the 300 didn't just fight a battle, they fought for the idea that some things are worth dying for. And they won. Not at Thermopylae, but in every history book, every movie, every story. Every time someone stands against impossible odds and refuses to quit. That's their victory, and it will never die. Molon Labe, come and take them.